Hello, hello, hello.
Okay. I'm Carolyn with the McCurry County Democrats, and I'm so glad you all came just to see me.
Yes!
It's Cyndi, and before we leave, there's a table over there, and we really need to meet the filing deadline on the 10th. So everything that you can give is very much appreciated. And
Thank you, Carolyn. I appreciate it. Thank you to Jean, both of you, for all of your help and support in organizing this event and getting lots of folks out here. I'm very grateful, so thank you all for being here. I'm Cyndi Munson. I'm the Democratic leader in the State House of Representatives, and I'm the official Democratic nominee to be Oklahoma's next governor. Very grateful to get through the primary and have such great support. So if you voted in the Democratic primary, thank you for your vote. Regardless of who you voted for, hope you voted for me, but either way, we're all on the same team now, and our job is to win in November and do everything that we can to get Oklahoma back on track. I am from Southwest Oklahoma. I shared with some of you as I was walking in. I was raised in Lawton by a single dad who served 22 years in the United States Army. My dad served in Vietnam. He went into the military right after, well, not right after, he did some stuff after high school and then enlisted in the military. My mother's from Seoul, South Korea. It makes me the first Asian American woman to be elected to the state house and the first to run for governor. I've been through in life because I want to show Oklahomans what's possible when we invest in children, when we invest in families, and when we do hard work and get out there and connect with everyday people. I'm a proud product of Lawton Public Schools. I know there's lots of educators and former educators in the room, and Mrs. Burris, who's the mother of Coach Burris, who is him and his wife, Mrs. Burris, were great influences on my life. I grew up with her granddaughter, Whitney, in Lawton, and would not be where I am today without public education, specifically my teachers and my counselors who invested so heavily in me. I graduated Eisenhower High School in 2004. We were ranked 17th in the nation for public education. We had a Democratic governor by the name of Brad Henry and a more balanced state legislature. And our policymakers at the time and the governor were focused on investments in public education, which is so vital to what we have to correct in our state today. I went to the University of Central Oklahoma, first in my family to go to college, thanks to Oklahoma's Promise. Yes, yeah. Without it, I truly would not be where I am today. I certainly wouldn't be running for the highest office in state government if it weren't for education, which is why it's so important to me and what I have fought to protect the 11 years I've been in the legislature, and why it is a core focus for me as I run for governor and become Oklahoma's next governor. I worked in the nonprofit sector before I ran for office. I worked for Girl Scouts of Western Oklahoma, serving 39 counties in Western Oklahoma, minus the Panhandle, specifically serving girls and families who were impacted by generational incarceration, girls that were at risk of going into our juvenile system, who were going to under-resourced schools, who were already, many of them teen moms, who needed resources to get on a positive path and see other opportunities for them in their lives. And as I was traveling and doing my work, I looked at my own lived experiences and all the different directions I could have gone if it weren't for public education and different programs that I was in. I could have gone down so many other paths, but it opened my eyes to the teachers that were leaving the classroom, counselors that were not available for students, nurses, school nurses that are so hard to fill our schools with now, made me more vocal on making sure that we had leaders at the state capitol who were talking about these issues and trying to solve those problems. I started running for office in 2013 when I was 28 years old. I did not win my first race, but I won the special election in 2015, flipping House District 85, which is in central Oklahoma City. It includes Nichols Hills and the Village, formerly represented by former Governor Mary Fallin. So this district, was a Republican stronghold, and I highlight that because I want you to see, again, what's possible when we get out there and we do the hard work, we talk to voters regardless of party affiliation, and get to the issues that are important to Oklahomans. So I've been knocking doors for a long time. I've been opposed every single time I've been up for election by the most wealthy Republicans, the most conservative right-wing Republicans, and I have won because I've stayed focused on the issues that matter to Oklahomans. And I stick up for Oklahomans. I stand up and fight for working people when the majority party wants to take away rights, make things more difficult to access basic necessities. And again, the challenges that we're facing in many that I think are even more extreme here in southeastern Oklahoma and in rural Oklahoma across the state. But I'm grateful every day that I've been able to serve in the legislature, to represent my constituents. I made the decision to run for governor because I don't believe Oklahoma can continue being led by one party any longer. We are 50th in the nation. Since Republicans have taken full control of quality of public schools, we know that our rural hospitals are at risk of closing. The funding that has been taken away and the difficulty to recruit physicians and nurses and other healthcare providers to our state because of extreme laws, getting the government meddling involved in private healthcare decisions. Regardless of where you stand on the issue of abortion or reproductive health care, we cannot have the government making things so extreme and difficult for women, because now we have babies born in emergency rooms or on the side of the road. There are no OBGYNs in many of our communities. And I have visited the hospital here in McCurtain County. I've visited the hospital most recently in Shattuck, Oklahoma, and I've listened to just horrifying stories of what's happening to women across our state. And being a woman myself, I am very grateful that I have health insurance. Preventative health care is very important to me, and every woman in this state should be able to access the health care that they need. When you look at our economic challenges that we face, especially in rural Oklahoma, it's hard to bring industry and build business in these communities because of education and healthcare. We know when a hospital is up and thriving, more businesses come to your community. When public education is thriving and teachers are supported and students have the resources that they need, families choose to stay in their hometowns and their small communities as opposed to going to other places. One of the biggest threats to rural public education, but public education as a whole, is Republicans' efforts to continue to put public money into private schools. The reports that come out of where these tax dollars are going specifically to wealthy families, many that I represent in Oklahoma City, which is why I mentioned Nichols Hills. Those families, I knock doors and I see yard signs for Bishop McGinnis and Cassidy and Heritage Hall, which they have a right to send their children to those schools for whatever reason. But we, as working folks, as working Oklahomans, should not be funding the private education that these families can already afford. And over again, it's showing that those at the highest brackets at the high income brackets are able to afford private education. We're already sending their kids to private schools. We need to be investing, and we have a constitutional duty to invest in public schools and make sure that every child in Oklahoma, regardless of where they live, have access to free, quality public education. So as governor, I will work to eliminate or fully repeal or reduce that private school voucher program that Republicans have put in place that is now costing the state of Oklahoma nearly $300 million. That's just one of three things that this last legislative session Republicans put funding into. Another was $12.5 million to Trump Dream accounts and $200 million to a sovereign wealth fund. That's $500 million right there of public tax dollars, our money, that is going to programs that we never feel the effects. We never feel the impact of how those monies are being used. We need to be investing in public schools, healthcare, our roads and bridges, public safety, water infrastructure. These are things that impact all of us, or a majority of us, and we need to get back, in my opinion, to the basics. Reprioritize our tax dollars. We don't have to raise taxes to do the things that we know actually help everyday Oklahomans. So I'm excited to be here back in McCurtain County and Idabel specifically. I was here in January toward the hospital, went to some local businesses, had a meet and greet. You all have doubled the amount of people that were there in January, so I'm appreciative of that. And I know that not every person in this room is a registered Democrat, and that makes me even more grateful because this is now a time where we have to look beyond party politics. You need to look at the candidates and what they're focused on and what their motivations are. You have two guys on the other side of the aisle who are multimillionaires who are putting millions of dollars into their own campaigns. And if you look at the last 8 years that we have had in the state of Oklahoma, Oklahoma elected a guy who could put millions of his own money into his own campaign, which means he's not accountable to people, especially everyday people. And it's so easy for them to get self-interested and look at what benefits them, not Oklahomans. I know what it's like to pay rent. I know what it's like to put groceries in my refrigerator. I know what it's like to fill up my gas tank and get to the end of the month and trying to stretch my last dollar to get to that next paycheck. And that is what we need in the governor's mansion. We need more legislators in the legislature who understand this as well, so that we stay focused on all of you. So I'm here today to share about me, and I've done it, and I'm also here to answer questions and hear what's on your mind. So I'm happy to take questions and hear about the issues that are most important to you. Whoever wants to go first gets to. And if you don't mind sharing, I didn't get a chance to come say hi to y'all back there. I'm sorry before I got started, but. Wow. Did that cover it all?
You did.
Yes.
I read the text of the, I think it's SQ 8626 or something, the one about ID for voting.
Yes.
We already have ID for voting.
That's right.
What's going on, do you know?
Yes, so Carolyn,
Yes.
she's asking about the two state questions. So whether you're, if you're registered Republican, you have a primary runoff ballot. If you're registered Democrat, you also have a primary runoff ballot. But everybody has a ballot on August 25th to vote on these state questions. I think it's 846 that you're talking about, which is voter identification. So when you went to vote in June, what did you take with you?
Passport.
Or passport, meaning you already taken your identification. That's already the law. You bring a state ID, your passport, and your voter registration card. So what this state question is trying to do, this was put on the ballot by the legislature. I voted against it because we're already doing it. This is to pander and play politics and try to get a certain set of voters out by fear-mongering. But it's to change what voter identification you're bringing, meaning that it will be placed in state statute, and politicians, depending on the politics of the day, will decide what identification, whether it's something extra you have to bring, or as we've seen at the federal government, the attempts there on, especially the impact on women, if your name has changed for whatever reason, or documentation that you can't access or can't find, quite frankly. Does everybody know where the birth certificate is? Okay, good. I do too, but not everybody does. So all that to say, I voted no. I'm sorry?
Certified birth certificate.
Yes, yeah. But I voted no, so that's what that state question is trying to do. But you need to get out and vote on August 25th. And it was a strategy to put these state questions on a low voter turnout ballot because not everybody's paying attention, especially, for a majority, I don't know when Idabel schools start or the surrounding school districts, but for a majority of Oklahoma public schools, the first week of school is August 24th. Or maybe the week before, maybe August 13th or something. So everyone's focus is everywhere else. And it's not a regular election date that people are more familiar with or used to. So stay vigilant on that. Great question. And there'll be a lot of state questions on the November ballot as well. So as Republicans have tried to make it more difficult for everyday people to put initiatives on the ballot, which we have the right to do, they've been pushing a lot onto the ballot this last legislative session. Hypocrisy, I said, and they were like, no. To be told that I'm wrong.
Talk about data centers.
Yes.
And then I'd like to ask about the nuclear campus concept that seems to be bouncing through some federal money.
Yeah. So first with the data centers, Heather, there's been some conversations about a project down here, right? What area where are they looking?
I think they're looking on that road that used to be a plant there at Broken Bow, Craig Road. We're looking at that, and a lot of us, even though we couldn't vote for those guys, there wasn't a Democratic candidate in our representative race. So we went, several of us went to that to listen to those guys talk about it. And that's when I read that, and what I read in the newspapers when I became aware.
Okay. You mean your city council?
No, talking about.
Oh, state
The state representative race.
Yeah. So obviously we've seen projects or project proposals pop up across the state. And what I have said, I put this statement out on June 3rd that should I be elected governor on day one, I would put a moratorium pausing any new projects. So retroactively might be a little more difficult, but any new projects going forward after 2027. so that we can actually study and see what is actually happening, what's going on, how many projects are popping up, what's the economic impact, what's the environmental impact. We have done some things through the legislature this year to protect water, to protect utility rates in the sense of that if these large load companies or, you know, energy users are using up electricity are not, those costs do not fall on us. That there has to be, the Corporation Commission would create a report highlighting, you know, how much power are you using versus what we're using as everyday, you know, residential users, and that cost does not fall on us. I do think we probably still need to go even further, and we've got to work with local municipalities, because what I have picked up on what's happening is that they're looking at different communities within the state of Oklahoma to see how they can work, because it's a little bit easier to get through the process working with the city council or mayor versus the entire state of Oklahoma. And no matter if data centers are going to be here, whatever they do should benefit Oklahomans, meaning they cannot have property tax exemptions. They cannot use up all of our water and natural resources. They cannot put strain on our electricity where it costs us more for them to be here. But they, you know, big tech obviously is looking all across the country, and Oklahoma is one of the first places they look, or where, you know, they like Oklahoma because of the land and because of the low utility costs and our natural resources and the very loose regulations. And so we have to tighten up our regulations to protect our natural resources. In terms of the nuclear plant, I don't have a ton of information. I do know that they want to send, I think there's wastewater or waste,
Well, is that not the boogaboo of nuclear power anyway, is what to do with the waste?
Yes, and so it's a bit frustrating that our state is looked at and being considered when it comes to these types of industries, right? Because it's unsafe for us, it's unsafe for agriculture, it's unsafe for our natural resources, our air, our water. And so we're on a list of 5. I don't know what the full process is at this point. I will tell you, in the legislature, there has been more moves to look at nuclear energy and have some regulations put in place. I think no matter what with these industries, especially that are demanding more electricity, these high technology industries are gonna need more regulations. Otherwise, they will come use and abuse all of our resources. Yes?
What will you do to rebuild relationships with the tribal nations?
Great question. The question was, what will I do to rebuild relationships with our tribes? The 11 years I've been in the legislature, I've worked closely with our tribes. Just Monday, I met with Governor Tubby in his new role, and on Friday, I meet with Chief Batten. And throughout the campaign, I have been meeting with tribal leaders, tribal citizens. I've been very honored to be invited to, I was at the Indian Nations powwow last Saturday and an Indian Hills powwow the week before, and I feel very grateful for that. I think because they see and know that I have a genuine interest in rebuilding that relationship and really finding partnerships with the tribes. And again, I have always worked with them, especially with this governor, because of his aggressive behavior against the tribes. They've had to work more closely with the legislature to renew compacts and things like that, and so I have always supported those compact renewals. I have delivered votes through my caucus to support those compact renewals, and I understand and respect and want to protect tribal sovereignty. I want to find ways to work together. One thing that's so frustrating that I hear on this throughout the campaign and some of the folks on the other side is obviously tribes have a huge economic impact in our state, especially in rural communities. But tribes are also not just dollar signs, in my opinion. You know, the tribes have an obligation, especially the leaders, to serve and protect and provide, make sure that their citizens are provided for. And we have to find ways to work together, and they always step up to work with the state of Oklahoma. And there's more that the state has to do. One of the Republicans have said that he's worked out deals with tribes, but wanting to demand that tribes do more for non-tribal citizens. And I'm like, that's our responsibility. We have to do our part. We can't put all the obligation on tribes. But I look forward to continue working with tribal leaders and tribes for the success of all of Oklahoma. I feel like we need music.
But what about higher education? Because higher funding in Oklahoma, the community colleges and the Russos are highly dependent on higher funding. And frequently that is overlooked or even reduced, kind of with the idea that that money is about funding, overeducated people, so.
So the questions about higher education funding, particularly for Russo schools and regional universities. So you'll be glad to know, since I graduated from UCO, Little College Cyndi was also a big advocate at the state capitol, specifically for funding for Russo schools, because I felt like OU and OSU always got all the attention, and schools like UCO, Southeastern, even with UCO being the sort of flagship of the Russos, the other schools still also need additional support and help. And I know Southeastern in this area of the state and the satellite campuses as well. So protecting funding, this goes back to why we cannot cut income taxes. So when you hear that promise, even with certain triggers and preserving revenue or doing it in a way that just the language they use on the other side to try to make it seem like they're not gonna make cuts, they will. I came in the legislature in 2016, we faced a $1.5 billion budget deficit because of Republican income tax cuts. So cut public education, like you said, first thing to go, higher education, healthcare, but with our rural institutions, and I think what you're trying to make is it's not about just being a highly educated liberal professor, it's about responding to the local economy and giving students, whether they're fresh out of high school or maybe they went to career tech first or they're restarting a career, that they have an affordable, accessible opportunity and to be able to stay in their community, whatever that may look like. We have a real threat too because of the federal funding cuts that have happened. I know specifically with Southeastern, isn't there an Idabel satellite over here? Okay, I know that with the DEI fear, some federal funding that has been cut for, but that money is for like upward bound students and for students who are facing additional barriers of no fault of their own to access higher education. So what we are gonna have to do, and again, why it's important to have a governor who's not gonna cave to the president, who isn't gonna fall in line with the same ideology that we've seen for the last 20 years, is making sure that if the federal government's gonna cut, we have to figure out and work extremely hard to make sure that we have state solutions. We have the money, we're gonna have to use that money to protect the things that we all care about. And to me, it's when I say education, we always do a bad job of just K-12, but I mean higher ed and career tech, and our hospitals. Okay, and so I will say I'm very grateful. These last couple years ago, I worked with the current Speaker of the House on funding for deferred maintenance because that's a huge challenge that our rural institutions and Russo face. Is buildings fall apart. And it's not sexy to talk about HVAC systems and mold, and those are the things that we have to fund. We have like maybe about $1 billion in terms of deferred maintenance that we needed to do statewide. And so we were able to finally put some funding into improving a lot of that. And I have been able to visit a few campuses across the state to see the improvements that have been made. But that all matters because if a building is not functional, you can't have programs and you don't have seats. And so if you don't have seats, you don't have humans in the chairs to be able to respond to the workforce needs that we have, specifically healthcare and things like that in our smaller towns. So being someone who has, I mentioned Oklahoma's Promise, but still, even though I had that scholarship, any of Oklahoma's Promise recipients or NOAA recipients, if you're a teacher, of course you know of students who received Oklahoma's Promise, or OLAP, which is what it was called when I was in high school. You still have to pay for other things. I still have to take out student loans and work and all my little scholarships and things like that. But I'm saying all that to say that we need to make sure that higher education is affordable. And we do that by making these investments and making sure that there's availability for all our students. Are you in higher ed? Yeah.
The bottom line is you can't expect to cut taxes and then receive the same quality of service.
Exactly.
And is that right to say that?
Yes. Well, and what's happening too, and what is, opening the eyes, especially for like the state chamber, and of course local chambers and economic development groups who already knew this, but, the taxes are, this is as good as it's gonna get. Like we're doing well in the sense of attracting business to Oklahoma. That's not what they're worried about. One of the reasons why we can't close deals is because of education outcomes, healthcare outcomes, childcare, not having accessible, affordable childcare. In 52 counties, there's no childcare.
And no place for people to live either.
That's right. Housing is a huge challenge. So that's why I say get back to the basics. These are basic things that we all need to live, that raising a family, you're gonna need to send your child to a safe place that they can go so you can actually go to work. So these are things that we can, as governor, working with the legislature, I'm the only one in this race who's had to work in the super minority to get the opposing party to adhere your bills and then have the opposing party's governor sign your bill into law. So I have the experience of building relationships and getting us focused on what matters. I don't like to give them a lot of cover because they're in power, so they gotta be held accountable. But I know of, lawmakers on the other side that are my friends, that are smart, that care about their communities. But when you have a governor who says eliminate the income tax and hold a flat budget for every state agency, which means cuts, that's what they're gonna provide to get their deals done. They need to have a governor, both sides need to have a governor that says, we're gonna work together to make investments in public schools and healthcare. Yes,
Recently, the dollar was here to raise the minimum wage family.
yes,
If you could come on over to that.
absolutely. I actually have had legislation in the last couple of years for just a clean increase in minimum wage. Meaning not the additional, like this state question had removing exemptions and then also having the minimum wage increase with inflation. I think that we can get a clean minimum wage increase bill through the legislature, yes. Part of why my bill didn't get through is because there was gonna be a state question. So the chairman cut it once he found out about that. So I'm like, who knows by that? So a Republican business chairman was willing to hear an increase in minimum wage bill, and I think we could have got it done, and we should have. And unfortunately, I believe a majority of Oklahomans do believe people need to make a living wage. They need to make above $7.25 an hour. We all know that you cannot make it on that much. You can barely make it on $15 an hour. I think in Oklahoma City or any Oklahoma county actually, you'd have to work 93 hours a week to afford, if you're working minimum or below a living wage, to afford a default one-bedroom apartment. That's in any Oklahoma county, so that's not like urban Oklahoma, it's everywhere. So we know this. I think that unfortunately the governor, his strategy to put it on a low voter turnout ballot worked this time, which is really, really unfortunate, but I do believe we can get it through the legislature.
Have you had the opportunity to address the County Commissioner Association and 50th millennium?
Meaning, have I spoken to them? Yes.
Good.
Yes, I spoke to them in April. It was their spring convention, so it was county commissioners and other county officers, yes. Who, by no surprise of anyone in this room, not in favor of property tax cuts. Because, county services are funded by property tax, so is career tech, public education, of course,
2015, Mary Fallon, when she got reelected, the first thing she did was cut the county commissioners over $300 million so she could cut the income tax 0.25% for the richest people in this state.
Yep.
And they've never fully recovered since then.
Exactly.
With inflation on road and bridge material and jobs and all this, they've never caught up since then.
I love having a former state senator because it's true. And when people ask me, I think you would agree, but you're welcome to correct me if I'm wrong. When you hear, well, we put all this funding in education, we've increased it. Yes. But we are still catching up from what happened in 2014, 15, 16, 17, and of course, the walkout happened in 2018. So once you start making those cuts, it is very difficult to recover. It is, and by the way, it takes 51 votes to cut taxes. It takes 76 to raise revenue. So imagine how we're going to get a majority of Republicans to come together with Democrats. There are very few politicians, quite frankly, regardless of party, who want to say, raise your taxes. So it's very difficult. So we've got to stop thinking and being so short-sighted on cutting revenue and go selling some You know, it's false to say that we can cut taxes and still provide the services, like you said, that everybody wants and needs. Other challenges that we have in our state, you know, with economic opportunities, especially for working families, when we are one of the top states in the nation of childhood hunger, that's a problem. When kids are going to school hungry, when their bellies are not full, and, you know, depending on if you go to a school district that pays for breakfast and lunch, you're lucky. I will work on, and I know we can make it happen, because we've had Republican members and Democratic members who have proposed bills to pay for breakfast and lunch for every Oklahoma child that goes to a public school. It is one of the best investments we'll ever make. I saw on the news, I mean, there obviously with school starting here very soon, the food bank, regional food bank in Oklahoma City is doing a lot of obviously getting ready for their backpack programs for the school year. But it is so frustrating to see and hear and know that statistic and the number of families and children and veterans on SNAP, and knowing that the federal government wants to cut that and put more pressure on Oklahoma when we can't carry that. Same thing with Medicaid. When it comes to rural health care, the reality is that we need stabilized funding, and that includes protecting Medicaid expansion in the state constitution. Republicans this last legislative session tried to move it out of the Constitution into state statute so that they could be more flexible around how we fund and what we fund. But when those cuts happened in 2016, one of the darkest days I've ever served in the legislature was when Republicans cut 100,000 Oklahomans off Medicaid. And know that people on Medicaid, these are low-income workers, these are people who are working, they are children, they are women, they are people with disabilities. And the governor's move to put more work requirements on and make it even more difficult to access those dollars costs all of us, because the more uninsured Oklahomans there are, the more that cost falls on us. And those Medicaid dollars also go to healthcare facilities. Tribes benefit from Medicaid dollars. People with developmental disabilities, facilities we have in rural Oklahoma, if those facilities close, not only do people not have services, people will not have jobs. You go to Billings, Oklahoma. I went to the Fairchild Center there, and there's not a lot of jobs in Billings, Oklahoma. That's just the reality. And so these folks who provide healthcare services 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, where will they go? What will they do? So it's a real serious problem that we have, and protecting those dollars is very important.
What did the budget commissioner kind of turn out to be total?
Appropriated?
Yes.
A little over 13 billion.
I mean,
13 billion.
could you break that down, the three top categories, education?
Oh, sure. Education, healthcare, and infrastructure. I mean, just sort of your typical, you know, government services where, which, gosh, I wish I had this in my back pocket. What we really need to look at is all the tax incentives and exemptions and credits that we give out, and which ones are actually, some are good. Some give us a great return on our investment. One, like I said, the private school voucher that turned $75 million, not a good return on our investment. But I think that's one place that we can look, and I think I could bring Republicans and Democrats together to look at where our tax dollars are going and bring them back to us. And by us, I mean state government. And you know, all these savings accounts, I'm in favor of saving money. We have to put money in the rainy day fund. But there are also constitutional limits in terms of how much you can put in. The governor brags on not being able to put another cent. Okay, the rainy day fund is set. There are constitutional protections where the legislature can't go in and just start taking money for whatever reason. There has to be revenue failures, emergencies, things like that. But all these extra savings accounts, like I mentioned, that sovereign wealth fund, that money has to sit there for 10 years before the legislature can tap into it. But that's $200 million that could have gone to the healthcare authority this year, so the $218 million provider cut wouldn't happen. Could have gone to education, could have gone to infrastructure, could have gone to so many different places instead. In terms of it's protected by statute that we can't use the money, but yeah. And I don't know if you heard or remember, as soon as that bill passed, or I think once we got through the budget, I can't remember the time frame, but there was news that came out that one of the governor's former business partners was over the account. So all the corruption, you know, one thing you're not gonna get out of me is rich buddies that are gonna get positions of power. I don't have a lot of rich buddies. So, you know, I I will look at people who are competent, who are more focused and interested in helping Oklahomans, and know that their job is about public service and that we're solving problems. And if they're not willing to do that, then they don't need to be in those positions. And I'm even open to looking at, I don't care what party you are, I want you focused on Oklahomans. That's what we should be doing. And Healthcare Authority is an agency that's very important. Agriculture, the Agriculture Department, OMA, there's a lot of talk about the medical marijuana program, and POTO. So these are key appointments that the governor has to get state government back on track. I love it.
Give some update on the two co-founders of the charter school, are they still trying to stay?
Oh, great question. I don't know where they are in terms of their trial, but I did want to I'm glad you brought that up. Speaking of AI and private school vouchers, are you all familiar with Alpha Schools? It's this new AI school that has been, there's various, I say locations, they call them locations across the country, but Tulsa and Edmond are likely to get, but there are families that choose to send their kids to this school, private AI school, would have access to that program. So the teachers, they call guides, make up to 6 figures. They use an AI generated curriculum. I think the students can go to sort of like a brick and mortar situation, but for the most part, everything's online. So I bring that up because we know what happened with Epic Charter Schools, and those are Oklahomans. These are folks who are not from Oklahoma, who are going across the country. This is a Trump-backed school, and STID supports it. So that's just corruption waiting to happen. And it'll be harder for us. And they don't do a good job of answering questions to the media. Some of our investigative journalists, if you follow Oklahoma Watch or any of those news outlets, have tried to get more information, and it's been very difficult. But we have to put more guardrails and regulations on AI, especially in public education as a whole, but and not getting our money and misusing our funds.
I hear a lot about, you're talking about, well, Mississippi's got such a wonderful education program. You know, Mississippi was below us for
Right.
a long time.
Yes.
How did they maintain such a great education program in Oklahoma did? Was it just funding cuts?
I mean, funding was I say this everywhere I go, I hope we stop comparing ourselves to Mississippi and then look at But yes, but you hear a lot about the Mississippi Miracle, but I think it was like a 10-year process where they did infuse more dollars into their public education system.
Oklahoma was on track to do that.
There you go.
They were on track when they did reading first, and that was 20-something years ago. And when they get away with that, that's how Mississippi stayed there. They kept all of the reading first things that they did.
Yeah. The other piece is that there's private funding of up to $100 million or something like that. So there is a fund in Oklahoma where private dollars can be used to hire literacy coaches, reading teachers, and those kinds of things. But what we have to do, to your point, is if we're going to put something in place like the literacy work that we did this year, we have to continue funding it and fully fund it instead of doing like, oh, we did this, we pat ourselves on the back, and then in 2 years we cut taxes, and then that's the program that gets cut. So it's this constant flip-flopping back and forth instead of sustaining and waiting until we see outcomes and results. But I still come back to this, that if you want to improve academic outcomes for children, you have to take care of their basic necessities too at home. We know children learn to read, and they love reading and explore reading more at home, but you have to have parents also who are home who can do those things. And so those economic challenges are very real. And we need more teachers in our classroom. It does require more pay. I will see in the comments, I see all the comments, so whatever you say, I see it. They'll say, oh, paying teachers more is not going to get a better outcome. Well, that's false, because we need teachers to not have to work 2 jobs. We also need teachers to stay in the classroom because they are being recruited, as you all know, not just across the border if you're in a bordering town, but industry. Same with our support staff. When a Love's travel stop on the Tulsa Turnpike can pay more to recruit a support staff worker from Chandler Public Schools yeah, she's gonna leave, and she did, because she makes $2 more an hour working the cash register. So those are the real, those are the real challenges, and that's why we have to increase pay, yes.
I saw the other day, I may not have the number correct, but there are 1,300 people teaching Oklahoma schools that are not certified. I think that is also a
Yes.
problem.
Yes.
Because Governor Stitt made it easy
Yes.
for people to teach
Yes.
and not really be a teacher.
Yes.
Some of them don't even have college degrees.
Yes.
Right.
And some schools are turning to hiring those people because they can pay them an adjunct
Yes.
salary
That's right.
without having to pay a local teacher's salary. And that's not just hurting our kids, it's a slap in the face to the teacher.
Yes, yes. And again, it's a short-sighted solution, right? So really it's about,
Putting
Yeah.
the body in a classroom.
You know, we have definitely have to share the story. I mean, the Republicans have been in control since 2011. And I've been in education for 32 plus years. And your number is a little bit low, but the number of uncertified people in classes is extremely high. I mean, teachers. I mean, it shouldn't be that way, but there was little things along the way that have gotten us to where we are today. And we have got to go back. If you want quality education, we have to have quality people in the classroom. That's what, I mean, it starts at home, but then we have to have quality people here.
absolutely,
And we keep throwing everything at the teachers.
yes.
It's like, we need social emotional wellness, well, the teachers can teach that. We need financial literacy, well, the teachers can teach that. We need Jesus in the classroom, well, the teachers can teach that. We need 20 more minutes of recess, well, let's let the teachers do that. But let's get that committee right in the rhythm.
Right, right.
If you can't do that, there's not enough time.
Yes. And adding more time in the school day without increasing funding for, just to how to operate the school day, what the school districts need to operate right now. And there was $240 million more to, the Department of Education this year, but it was all tied to a mandate. It wasn't just an increase to what you're already having to deal with. Which is the point I'm making too with hungry kiddos. Teachers are solving that problem too. You're feeding, you're seeing what shoes do they have on? Do they have clothes? Do they have, and it's a lot, yeah.
I think we spent like $2,000 last year for clothing and food for our kids.
Yeah, yeah,
That's just my.
yeah. And thank you for what you do. You shouldn't have to. I mean, a teacher is the best we have in our communities and in our society, but we can't put all that pressure on you. You have to take care of your family too, and you deserve to do that. And I always say this when people say teachers have the best hearts. I'm like, the best hearts don't pay the bills. So we gotta get on track on making sure we're compensating our teachers for everything that they're doing. But to your point too of everything you have to take on, this is why we need counselors and nurses. I have students that come through the Capitol all the time. In this last session, many of the high school groups, especially in rural Oklahoma, I asked them, what do you think? What do you need? For the Idabel teachers, I cannot remember his name right now, I'm so sorry, but this young man who went to Boise State, you probably know him, you could probably find him. He is an Idabel high school student, he's a rising senior, huh? He's gonna be a senior. Okay, this young man, he could ask me anything at Boise State this year, and his question was, ma'am, I'm from Idabel, and my teachers deserve higher pay. As governor, what are you gonna do? And he gave example after example of what his teachers have done, and so be proud of your students. Yeah, so tell him he was remembered. I'm sorry I couldn't remember his name right off the bat, but I remember where he was sitting and everything, and I was so moved that these young students talk about that. But the students that have come to me, I asked, outside of teacher pay, what's the next thing we can do? And they said, we need counselors. We need somebody we can talk to. We need more adults in our life that we can share the challenges that we're going through. And I think for students to be able to vocalize that is pretty powerful, to know their needs. And so we gotta, again, give back to taking care of the actual needs in our state. So with that, I think we only have this space till about 7 o'clock, but I wanna make sure I'll come to the front over here to answer any one-on-one questions that you have, take photos. But like Carolyn said, I have a fundraising deadline that's coming up on August 10th. I know this isn't technically a fundraiser, but any dollar that you can give to keep me on the road, to keep my message getting out there across the state of Oklahoma, is gonna go a long way. You know, like I said, the multimillionaires that are funding their own campaign, I'm not one of those. I can't do that. And I'm grateful to the now over 10,000 Oklahomans who have given to my campaign. It's pretty incredible what we've been able to do. And the average donation is like $60, which is a tank of gas now. And so for people to sacrifice and to give in that way tells me that we have thousands of Oklahomans that share this vision of making change in Oklahoma and getting back to investing in us. And I think the time is now, and it is no more important than November 3rd of 2026. You can also sign up to volunteer, you can knock doors, you can stay in an air-conditioned space and do virtual phone banking, you can text. There's plenty we can do, and you all can do. Our goal is to connect with voters one-on-one. We'll be on TV and all that stuff, but we make change when we actually talk to voters. When you talk to your peers, your family, your neighbors, your coworkers, folks you go to church with, encourage them and make sure they get out and vote. It's unacceptable that we're last in the nation for voter turnout. On top of that, it's why we get the results that we do. We are not a Republican state, we are a Republican-controlled state. And so we know that there are more Oklahomans that care about their schools and healthcare, and we gotta get them out to vote. And of course, there's yard signs, so feel free to grab one of those on your way out. I was asked about t-shirts and other merchandise. You can get all that on the website. We don't stockpile those, unfortunately, but you can get online. You get it sent to you, and that supports the campaign as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. It means so much to me. I know many have said thanks for coming to Idabel, and nobody really comes out here, which makes me sad. This is, you know, being a Southwest Oklahoma gal, I like Southeastern Oklahoma better, quite frankly. I love the green trees and, you know, just being away from everything. What I've heard over and over again from Oklahomans, especially as I go into smaller communities, is that we feel unseen, we feel unheard, and we feel left behind. And I'm showing you in this campaign I will not leave you behind. I want to become governor, mostly so I can come back. So I can come back. At the Capitol and the Governor's Mansion and those conversations, because you matter. You deserve to stay in your community and have access to the things you need to live here and to raise a family. So thank you for your support. Thank you for